dog's life, you were able to feel what it's like to be a dog. You can choose to be a Labrador, Poodle, Boxer, Whippet, German Shepherd, and Fox Terrier and go on an adventure. Well, if you constitute adventure as looking for bones and food, searching garbage bins for treats, visiting restaurants for a good meal, having a good drink, and peeing on lampposts. Just be sure to avoid the dog catcher. First dog to find and bury 3 bones in their den wins. For the setup, place the bone counters, newspaper counters, and trash counters next to the game board. Newspaper counters are placed number side down. Each player randomly draws 1 dog card and 1 den card and places it face up in front of themselves. Take the corresponding dog figure and deck, place your dog figure on the corresponding den square on the game board. The hunger counter starts at 4 and place 1 piddle counter on your board in the bladder box. Remaining tokens are placed next to the player area. Each player's turn consists of the following phases, in order. 1. Food. The player moves the hunger counter down 1 step to the left at the beginning of each turn. If you are at 0 at the start of your turn, your dog is starving, and you must move your dog figure to the first step of the dog shelter. All newspapers and bones are dropped and stay in the square their dog just vacated. The player's turn ends immediately. 2. Dog stuff. The dog moves and performs actions using their allocated action points. Movement is to adjacent places, and a dog can move through spaces with another dog or the dog catcher's car, but cannot end its movement there. You must enter and exit by the entrance, which is indicated by a paw print. 3. Dog catcher. The player moves the dog catcher's car and possibly sends some dogs to the shelter. Action cards are used when performing an action. Flip 1 off the top of the deck to resolve an action. When your deck is empty, shuffle and form a new deck. Now we're going to look a bit more closely at dog stuff actions. Searching the trash. If a dog is in a square with an unmarked trash can, they can search the can for an action point. Flip your action card, see what you receive. The sad puppy face means you get nothing. Add trash can token to the space. A big cleaning. This happens when the last garbage can token has been placed. Remove all piddle and garbage can tokens except for the one you just placed. Begging at restaurants. When your dog is at a restaurant, flip 1 of your action cards over to see what reward, if any, they receive. A dog cannot beg at the same restaurant twice. Obtaining a newspaper. A dog can obtain a newspaper to deliver from the newsstand. Each newspaper has a given address, which is the number listed on the token. The token is placed number side down on the player's board in the dog's mouth. Delivering a newspaper. When a dog enters a building with a newspaper for that delivery address, they have delivered the newspaper. The counter is shuffled back into the stack. Flip your top action card to see what reward you have received. Having a drink. If your dog is in a square with a fountain, it can have a drink. Add a piddle counter to your bladder. You can do this more than once in a turn, but not exceeding your bladder count. Marking a lamppost. If your dog has a piddle counter in their bladder and is in a square with a lamppost, they can mark the lamppost. Add the piddle counter to the square with the lamppost. If there is a piddle counter in a space, a dog cannot move through the space. If they decide to do so, their dog stuff turn ends and they proceed to the dog catcher phase. Fight. If your dog is adjacent to another dog, you may attack. Both defender and attacker turn over an action card. The dog with the most paws wins the fight. The losing dog drops any newspapers and bones in that square and moves 1 square from the winner. Dogs can pick up and or drop bones or newspapers by using action points. If a dog is in its den, well, it can bury its bones. The dog catcher. Moving the dog catcher is the final action of the active player's turn. Roll the die and move the dog catcher's car, straight ahead, left or right, according to the die result. It can pass through spaces with dogs and tokens, but if it ends on a space occupied by a dog, the dog is caught and is taken to the dog shelter. All possessions are dropped on that square and the dog figurine is placed on the first tier of the shelter. If the dog catcher is adjacent to a dog, the player turns over an action card and the card determines whether the dog escapes or is sent to the shelter. At the shelter, well, no standard actions are performed here. Leaving the shelter. If your dog is at the shelter, you turn over a card at the beginning of your turn and check the escape section to see if your dog has escaped. If yes, start at the starting area of the board indicated by the black paw. If no, move to the next tier and resolve on your next turn. If you start on the 3rd tier, no cards are flipped, and you start your turn on the starting area. The game ends when a player has buried 3 bones in their den. So now we're ready to give our review for A Dog's Life. What'd you think?
It was okay. It was fine. Like, so the game itself isn't bad at all. I like that you can take the different roles of these different dogs and you're doing very dog things. And it's like, action point allocation. You get to do this, you get to do this. And then it's a little bit of pick up and deliver too. But my biggest issue was the fact that choosing a different dog, everyone has a different deck of cards and a different amount of points that you can do. And normally that's fine. A little asymmetry, not a big deal. It's the fact that they kind of did that with dogs that are very stereotypical. So you have the nice, clean poodle, female, prissy, high-class gal. And then they made it so that it was easier for her to beg for food. So that, it's like, oh, you're a beautiful white dog. Let me give you all this food. And then they made the rough Rottweiler with, the backward cap and the gold chain. And they made it very difficult for him to leave jail. And, when you do something like that, it's like, what are you trying to say? Yes, they're dogs, but if they weren't dogs, it's saying something. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I have to agree with you on that. Now, I always kind of look to other people when I'm playing. Okay, maybe it's me and I'm overreacting and I'm looking too much into things. But as a teacher, I'm always looking at how, it comes across to children and how, we're educating kids. I mean, the game is meant to be a family game, and I get that. That is generally the vibe of the game. It's very simple, the movements of the game, or the gameplay itself is very simplistic, easier for kids to pick up, at that 8+ type age range. Do you find you run into the risk of running into problems when you take dogs and give them characters, humanize them a little bit? Because let's be honest, if you turn these dogs into humans, this game would be super offensive, right? So I think, for example, when you talked about the dog that, had the sideways cap, it's a dog on there, had some chains. I mean, I'm generally assuming we have something in mind. This is the dog that likes to fight. And when it got taken to the pound, the deck was seated that it was really hard to get out. I'm not saying this dog could never win, and some of the descriptions for the other dogs, the Whippet, was pretty and thin. Are these things that are synonymous? Yeah. So that kind of made me go, I don't know. I just feel like the characters could be developed a little bit differently for the dogs if you're going to go that route. Because I know there are other games that I've looked at and backed. There's one called Dogs that I backed, and it's a totally different story. It's about rescue dogs and building a rescue center, but it's about dog as a poodle, as a golden retriever. And I've been around dogs. I used to work in a vet clinic, so I'm very familiar with dogs and the different breeds. I don't know. So that was probably the one thing that bothered me about this game, would be that. And I think that's a main thing. Now, not everyone's going to notice it, but I noticed it, and the people I played with noticed it.
Exactly.
So.
Dogs is just such a near and dear subject to me because, you and I both own dogs, and we own dogs that, quote unquote, aren't normally socialized to be in, an urban city, and where they love every stranger, where nothing bothers them. They have no anxieties or stresses to create any anxiety in them, right? But because you and I have, dogs who, how can I say this?
They have special requirements, and they need to be loved a little differently. I get it.
So we're a little bit more sensitive when we see things that are just, clearly defining them in certain ways, where it's oh, this is a problem dog, or this dog would be like this or like this. And it's well, a dog's a dog. And then I also didn't like the fact that you can pick dog fights in the game, which I don't really think is very kid friendly, because then it makes you think that dogs fight, which isn't necessarily true. If it were different, saying you bark at another dog to maybe scare them away or something instead of making them fight. Like I didn't like that as like a kids or family game. It's not, they're not like that. And it's like you're saying so many things in a kids game, and like, you know, these things would normally get like a pass for people who wouldn't have dogs, but because you and I do, it's just so blatant. And like, to put it simply, like, it's just wrong in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, something that I mean, for the age group, I mean, I think on the box it's 6+. I mean, I think this game is definitely more of the 8+ range, but even then, introducing combat to a game, I don't know what the message is there. Like, I'm not saying it's, in my opinion, I don't agree with that, but maybe there's a reason for it. I mean, not to say that you never have conflict in life. I get that, but there are ways to resolve it. Is this game teaching you how to resolve that? Not really. You know what I mean? So it's not like, okay, pick the fight and then resolve. You're not getting that lesson. So coming to the actions of the game, the actual gameplay, you know, having the drink and having a piddle, delivering items like the newspaper news, and, you know, burying your bones to win the game. I mean, these are all very simple. It's your pick up and deliver. You have action points, which allow the kids to count. Okay, if I have 7 action points, then I only have 7, you know, movement or 7 things that I can do, you know, just as an example. So, I mean, in that respect, yes, you are teaching kids about counting, you know, and planning and things like that. And those are great things to learn. So, yes, there are some decent things in the game. So, I mean, as an overall for me, this would probably be about a 4 to a 5 out of 10 for me. I don't know if you're in the same range.
Looking at the gameplay alone, like, it's very simple, and, you know, it'd be like, if it didn't have the issues I have with the content, I think that kids can actually learn and understand this game. Like, you know, pick up and deliver, action point system, like, that's easy. And then you have it like with dogs, so there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, it's simple, it's easy to pick up. My biggest problem with it is the content, and it's hard for me to put a numerical value to it because of that. Because, you know, you have something that's fine, and then you have something that, you know, kind of makes me not want to play the game personally.
Right. So for me, I was looking at it and said, this is what was presented to me. This is the game. If I am looking at it just what's presented to me, that's what I would give it. If they reworked some of those things that we have issues with, you know, potentially it could be a good game. It's a very simple, family-friendly type game. If you're a gamer, this is not, I personally don't think this would be the game for you. Like I said, there are others that have the same kind of dog theme that will have a bit more strategy based toward a gamer. But, you know, if they fix some of those little things that we were talking about, I definitely think it could, you know, it could work. But again, focusing for children. If they were able to fix some of the things that we're not happy with, then it definitely could be a game that kids can just enjoy. I mean, kids don't know some of the background stuff, but as an adult, we're supposed to be teaching our children, right? About, you know, the good things, how to treat animals, how to treat others. And I mean, people say it's just a game, but you know what? There are lots of things in life that happen and people go, that just happens. It starts with children.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it as a teacher. So, you know, it starts when they're young. Teach them the right things from the beginning.
Exactly. Like, by giving them stereotypes already to start with, like, it's not something that I want to bring to a kid. Like one thing that stuck out for me was the fact that when you get the dog biographies, the Rottweiler said, "My face isn't pretty to look at," or something like that. And it's like, really? Like, this is like a dog. And like, I love Rottweilers personally. Like,
they're great. Honestly, I love pit bulls. I love all types of dogs. Like, my dog looks like an Ewok. So, I mean, he may not be the prettiest dog to somebody else, but guess what? He's pretty to me, so.
yeah. But this is just, I don't know. It just feels like it's very outdated with the content.
I would have to agree. Was there any game that you think it's similar to?
It'd be similar to any pickup delivery where, you know, go here, do this. I did like how you flip over a card and you don't know what the result will be. Like, you know, I'm gonna try digging through the trash. Let's find out what I get. You flip it over and it's like, oh, I didn't find anything in the trash this time. And then you do something else. So I like that thing without, you know, actually rolling dice, because I like kids games that don't rely on dice and just go like, you know, roll here, move here. It did add that unpredictability to it. And it also helps them remember, like, okay, so my deck has this, I have a so-and-so chance of this happening. it just didn't need to be different for every dog. It should have just been the same.
I agree. And I mean, it's also good too with the cars. I agree with you. It's a bit random, but then it also kind of makes them reevaluate. Maybe they had an idea of this is what they want to do. Uh-oh, we can't do that anymore. We got to do something else, and makes them think on their feet a little bit. So that was a good thing in the game. Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if this is the final result of the game. It might be pretty close to production, but the little miniatures were very cute. How they had the little miniature dogs for each one. I thought that was nice, and kids would love to play with, the little figurines. I mean, that's a nice touch. So in that respect, that was... Yeah. So I don't know how much else we can talk about the components, because I don't know if that's a completed game that we received. I'm assuming not. So...
Yeah, like, even if it wasn't finished, like, I did like where it was. Like, I did like seeing the dogs painted, too. And, like, after you play with the game, like, kids can even just play with the dogs afterward, just playing them like normally.
Absolutely. So, I think, did I miss anything, or did we cover all points?
I think I've said what I needed to say.
I think it's pretty clear. So for me, as a gamer, this is definitely not a gamer's game. I know that our audience they're targeting is family-friendly, children type game. Like the message that the game is sending. The game itself is fine. The mechanics are fairly simple, easy enough for kids to pick up, and I think they would enjoy that aspect. But as I said before, not comfortable with the message the game sends.
Yeah, same for me. If it didn't have the issues I had with how they portrayed some of the dogs and a little bit of the content too, then this would be a fine kids game. But I can't bring myself to support something that portrays dogs this way. I can't.
Yeah, I would agree. So those are our thoughts on A Dog's Life, and we'll see you next time. Bye.